So our next presenter will take us back to AI and to declarative search. Valerie Gibson.
Declarative search the hard way. Welcome everyone. Let me tell me something about me first. My session isn't so much about theory. It's more the story of how I tried to reverse engineer a mysterious old tool that no one really understood anymore, kind of like digital archaeology. Hi everyone, I'm Valerie Gibson. I live in Almere, just east of Amsterdam. And I work for a company called Finalist, where I spend most of my time building search solutions in Drupal and Solar. In short, I help people finding things on the internet, which sounds simple, but anyone who's ever configured Solar knows it's basically equal parts search, magic, and debugging code at midnight. I've been working with Drupal for quite a while now, building everything from editorial workflows to custom search experiences. Lately, I've been exploring how traditional search, the structured keyword-based kinds, can work together with newer AI techniques like vector embeddings and semantic search to make results feel a bit more human, like when you chat with ChatGPT. Outside of work, I have a family with 5 children, so there's never a quiet moment, except when I manage to pick up my violin, which is my way of relaxing. Though, to be honest, in a house with that many kids, calling it practice might be optimistic. What I enjoy most in work is the thinking part, figuring out how data moves, how queries turn into results, and how we can express intent in a way that systems actually understand. And that curiosity led me to the project I'll talk about today. It's a modern web tool for the National Library of the Netherlands, built in Next.js, that communicates directly with their old but wonderfully declarative SRU. And when I started this project, I had no experience with Next.js whatsoever. I had no idea of how SRU CQL queries really worked. And there was also no documentation of the XML responses. The National Library was already a client of Finalist, but it had mostly been colleagues who worked with them before. So I asked around, what do we actually know about this tool? Turned out not very much. The only thing anyone seemed sure of was that it was very old. No one really knew how it worked. And sometimes it just stopped showing any results at all. Apparently, it was time to bring it back to life. So a few days later, I received a little zip file, and that was my starting point. Oh, and one more thing. It had to be built in Next.js because that's what they were used to over there. Other than that, I was on my own. So the challenge. It was, what kind of tool was this anyway? What request did it make? Well, it was written in PHP, so far so good. That was obvious, but which version? And could I even get it to run at all? I ended up feeding the zip file to the language model I was using at that time. I hadn't yet entered my Claude phase because this project took place just a couple of months before the summer holidays. And as you all know, time flies. So my language model clues were, the files had a copyright notice from 2008, 2009. It used a Zen framework, 180, which it requires PHP 5.2.0 or higher. So the conclusion was the project was written for PHP 5.2, and it could probably run on a newer PHP version because it had a sign somewhere in the codes like 7.3, but the code itself was definitely written for 5.2. Okay. To give you an idea of what it looked like, this is the old tool. It's still online, actually. Let me see if I can get there. Yeah. So if I'm trying to search for something, for example, for a journal. Well, no results. Well, and of course, I did this on purpose. I'm deliberately searching for a journal, knowing full well it won't work. And as you can see, nothing comes up. Even though the journal does exist, because when I search for a letter, and I go this way, yes. Yes. You can see it's over there. Yes, there it is. So it's even there with volumes at all. And the issues, articles. So it's all there. But how do I get it? Yes. Yes. Find my notes again. Yeah. So what is SRU? What is it actually? It is a search retrieve protocol via URL, and CQL stands for contextual query language. It's a very declarative protocol, which means you describe what you want and not how to get it. So I'd like to take a look at the actual XML response from my SRU request. I'm going to turn on the debugger and we'll see what it comes back, because now that I know what kind of PHP version I had to use, I could also make it work on my local laptop. I will put this on the screen. Yeah. There you are. So this, I put it on my local machine. And if I go and search for, again, for the same word, keyword.
Can you zoom in a little?
Sorry, yeah. Zoom in. I think. No, it's not working, right? Like this? Yes, sorry. So I managed to put on my debugger, and that looks like this. And now I'm in the code of the very old tool, and I see, there is a request being done, and this is what's actually the URL for it. Now let's see what it gives back. So if we get here, then we find out what the URL is. And this is so there is a data coming back, XML response. And well, now that I know this, we can go a step further. Now I need to go back to my tool. Yes, here we are. So here we have an XML response. Well, but then the legacy reality in theory and in practice. Well, in theory, it should have been elegant and declarative, but in practice, it was really inconsistent XML. In theory, there would be structured metadata, but in practice, it was missing namespaces, for example. It should have been simple queries, but in practice, there was no wildcard support. There were times that there was a wildcard support, but then it changed during times, which was also inconsequent. So I had to come up with a good plan, reverse engineering the response. 1, I send a request manually. I inspect the XML response. I guess what each element means. I write a parser, and I realize it breaks for another record type. Well, continue and repeat. It was not so motivating. So I thought, let's do something nicer, building the front end. Make it actually look nice. I know what I wanted to do, but it also had to look at least a little presentable. Well, I knew one thing, it had to be built in Next.js. I knew there was direct SRU communication, no API layer, and fully declarative browsing of journals, articles, ESS, and NBNs. Well, and if there's not one thing I'm not great at, it's design. So I gave my colleague the sweetest look, told him to look at the old tool, and then he put together this little gem for me. Well, it looked much nicer than the old tool, modern look. And I thought, well, let's implement this. Let's see how we're going to fix this. So I broke up all the parts. For example, the navigation, the form parts, the alphabet results, and the article results look like this. This is the header, the navigation, the form, it's this, the alphabet results, and the article results. As you can see, these are all the, well, this part, but you get the idea. And then each interaction is a CQL query, and there was no imperative API logic. So I fed the different components to my language model. Each component represented an interaction. And the alphabet got its requests along with the corresponding XML responses, which were then parsed. The search form also received different request options, searching by journal, by article name, etc. And those XML responses were parsed as well. In theory, it all should have worked, but the beauty and the pain. Elegant versus fragile. It had transparent queries now that I got the logic, but it was also fragile, inconsistent responses. There was no backend needed, but also no validation or schema. So AI assistants to the rescue. Yeah, they were understanding my CQL syntax. They were parsing the code. They were debugging strange XML edge cases. And AI was my pair programmer. Yeah, so it was my best friend, but also it could be become very frustrating. And it was really the double-edged sword. AI accelerated development, but also caused new fragility. For example, it had hallucinated XML examples, overfitted parsing logic, a false sense of completion. So really, AI is great at making you think you're done, but then actually you're done. Not at all. It comes up with a new problem. Well, after all, the final results. Yeah, this is some bug. Whoop. Like this. Yeah. So this is what it had come up with. You can see if you now search for. Oh. You can search for journals. You can also search between in the list. Do a fuzzy search as well. So no result for this. Yes, we go there. but you can also search for articles itself, like this. And also, well, you can do all the things that wasn't possible in the old tool. What are lessons learned? Declarative protocols age gracefully, but not perfectly. Documentation matters less than actual data. Reverse engineering teaches structure awareness. AI helps AI, but you still need to read the XML yourself. So a reflection, declarative search isn't new. SRU proves that years ago, but with modern web frameworks and AI tooling, it becomes relevant again. Are there any questions?
Anybody in the room? Mohammed.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I always like to see presentation about not only the solution, but the travel to the solution.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. So thank you for that. I have a question. You mentioned PHP, okay. And so you travel from a technology to another, because PHP is more, I would say, backend technology, and JS, Next.js is more kind of front-end technology. Is there anything, did you, this travel from front-end to back-end that you had to do very quickly, did it give you another feeling? I mean, aside from the AI and the stuff.
Well, it depends on the customer, and it happens to be that this customer already had a lot of tooling built in Next.js. Usually, I work only with the backend CMS. That was the reason I actually had to build it in Next.js. And it's also, if I look at the trend at our customers, more websites get decoupled anyway. So then you can couple it with many more tooling and decouple it from the source, so that it's more flexible actually.
Bart.
So in your experience, you found inconsistencies in the responses from the SRU.
Yes.
But you solved them in your client application. So will you also give those back to the makers of the SRU so that it becomes better as an API?
Yes, because I found out that sometimes, for example, when you search on a letter, a character, it has a different structure than when you search for a keyword in the same journals. So that was not very consistent or logic. But also you saw that sometimes results were missing. And I couldn't fix that, not with the query. It was just not probably inserted well at the endpoint at their database. I'm not sure how it was inserted. So I gave that back. And I said, if you really want it to work, then it has to be inserted well. Also, they wanted to have a check that before you click on, for example, the volumes, that it could say, that it was noticed that that journal didn't have any volumes at all. But I said, but then there has to be a check done on another level, because I'm too late to check it here. It has to be inserted on a different manner. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So there's a question on Zoom, is that correct?
From the control room. The question is the resulting software maintainable by humans or only by better LLMs?
Oh, by humans. Yes, yes, yes. I checked it also. So I'm of course, because I still have to manage it myself. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, it's off to an early lunch now. Thank you very much, Valerie Gibson.